Welcome to this Wednesday night Sutta program with the Empty Cloud Monastery. I am Ayyā Sobhana, and those who are here are welcome to offer your greeting or ask questions during the chat, through the chat, and I will answer the questions at the end of my talk. Last week we started to speak about the Āhārasutta, inspired by Bhante Sudaso's talk about the nutriments. The more prominent teaching about the nutriments in the suttas is treating them as a description of the basic operation of samsara, what keeps the merry-go-round going around and around in samsara, starting with the nutriment of food, creating the continued life of the body, and ending with nutriment of consciousness, leading to rebirth. But there's another way of looking at the nutriments, which I started yesterday, not just teaching it as an aspect of the painful and unsatisfactory character of life in samsara that we must fully understand, but that there's not very much that we can do to stop the nature of samsara except by understanding it. But then in the other suttas that are given primarily in the Samyutta Nikaya, it talks about the nutriment of the 5 hindrances and the nutriment of the 7 factors of awakening. And this is showing how we can use the idea of nutriment in a way which is beneficial to our practice. So instead of being something we just have to suffer with, it's an idea that we can use to move forward in our practice. So I shall give respect to the Buddha, and then we'll look at the suttas. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammang sanghang saranang gacchami. Before continuing with the sutta about the Āhārasutta, we were going to speak about what we can do to nourish the development of the factors of awakening. That was our theme for today. But I want to also give you an extra treat, which is the Sila Sutta. And this one shows how the factors of awakening progress naturally. Once you get one, it naturally leads to the next one, naturally leads to the next one. So you don't have to completely be pushing the boulder uphill to develop these factors, but instead develop them in sequence and let one of them lead to another. So this is in the Samyutta Nikaya. It's part of the chapter about the Bojjhangas, the Bojjhanga Vagga, and it's the sutta, it's called Virtue. it begins about the precondition. What is it that is the platform that gets this sequence rolling? Earlier, when we were talking about the gradual training, or we were talking about the Upanishad sequence, which is something about meditation and wisdom, it was starting from the gladness of the mind, arising from a clear conscience based on having sila. In this case, it's giving a different starting point. It says, bhikkhus, those bhikkhus who are accomplished in virtue, accomplished in concentration, accomplished in wisdom, accomplished in liberation, accomplished in the knowledge and vision of liberation, even the sight of those bhikkhus is helpful. I say, even listening to them, approaching them, attending on them, recollecting them, going forth after them is helpful. For what reason? Because when one has heard the Dhamma from such bhikkhus, one dwells withdrawn by way of two kinds of withdrawal of the body and withdrawal of the mind. So you have this seclusion of body and mind from your old ways based on hearing the Dhamma from a teacher who has those realizations. Then, this is not the way you usually think of sati. Dwelling thus withdrawn, one recollects that Dhamma and thinks it over. Whenever a bhikkhu dwelling thus withdrawn recollects the Dhamma and thinks it over, on that occasion, the enlightenment factor of mindfulness is aroused by the bhikkhu. On that occasion, the bhikkhu develops the enlightenment factor of mindfulness. On that occasion, the enlightenment factor of mindfulness comes to fulfillment by development in the bhikkhu. So the practice of sati, the practice of satipatthana is given here as a reflection practice where one is reflecting on the various teachings that have been pointed out. And then, having developed it, dwelling thus mindfully, he discriminates that Dhamma with wisdom, examines it, makes an investigation of it. And when one mindfully discriminates and makes an investigation, then the enlightenment factor of discrimination of states is aroused by the bhikkhu. This would be when you are learning to look internally to your own experience, the phenomena that arise in your own mind, to test whether or not these dhammas that you've learned about and heard about and thought about, are these dhammas really true? Are they really to be experienced within our own states of mind? And that discrimination of states means that you're able to recognize within your own emotions, your own perceptions, and your own intentions, or whether these thoughts are wholesome or not wholesome, able to distinguish what is wholesome and what's not wholesome. So that's also described elsewhere as being an aspect of mindfulness, is having the ability to know the difference accurately between what's wholesome or unwholesome, what's skillful or not skillful. So then, having this investigation of the Dhamma, then his energy is aroused without slackening. Whenever the energy is aroused, he discriminates that Dhamma with wisdom, examines it, makes investigation of it. And then the factor of energy is aroused by that bhikkhu. So in one description that I heard about this is when you examine within your own experience, the phenomenon arising in your own experience, testing whether or not the Dhamma taught by the realized teachers is actually true or not, you can discover that it is true, that it does work, that these teachings do lead to the alleviation of suffering. They do lead to arising of true happiness, that it's really true that all things are impermanent, and so on. And when you realize that these teachings are true and you can know that for yourself, then you feel like, wow, this Dhamma is true. And it increases your faith in the Dhamma, and that gives you energy. Elsewhere, this factor of energy in the factors of awakening is described in ways which have to do with the step of the Noble Eightfold Path called Sama Vayama, or right effort, which is the beginning of the entrance into meditation, when you are able to arouse energy, direct the energy as you intend to direct it, maximize the energy, and be persistent in the energy, bringing the wholesome factors to their maturity and to their fulfillment. So this state is the transition to well, definitely within the realm of meditation. Then, when the energy is aroused in him, there comes what's called spiritual rapture. That's PT, and it's also called Niramisa PT. So a feeling which is Niramisa is translated as a spiritual feeling. Ramisa means flesh. It means like the meat in the body. So those feelings that you have that are arising from the body, if you, let's say, some emotion is triggered and your hackles go up on your neck and your stomach clenches and your eyeballs focus on a scary object, and the blood flows out of the core of the body onto the extremities of the limbs, so you'll be able to run away or hit somebody or do something like that. Those are all things that are happening in the meat part of the body, and you get a feeling connection to that. But then Niramisa Sutta, one is not focusing and not concerned like the reactivity that's happening in the flesh of the body is very substantially calmed down, and the feelings are starting with the mental factors, and you may notice that the mental factors are even more powerful, or equally as powerful in a different way as the instinctive factors of determining the mind. So this is a PT, a pure feeling, which doesn't have so much danger of changing its character and becoming painful, but instead it's more stabilized, more continuous, more safe. And so this is, again, it's part of entering into samadhi. Then when one's mind is uplifted by rapture, then the body becomes tranquil and the mind becomes tranquil. So you could see, because this PT was Niramisa PT, it's not based on the sensations coming up in the body. So then the mind is not so much interested, not that much focused on the sensations in the body, more focused on sensations arising from the mental states. And with the focus of awareness on the mental side of meditation, then the sensations in the body are not so prominent. So, like if you had a sore knee or a sore back, or if a mosquito is walking around on your head, thinking about where to bite you, those sensations are not that prominent, not demanding your attention. It's as if those sensations were happening in another room, but they don't really concern you. They don't disturb you. So the body becomes very tranquil at that point. And likewise, the mind and body together are become very tranquilized. So if you're worried about what somebody said to you this morning, or if you're worried about what you're going to do tomorrow, or if there's some memory bubbling up, it's like those random thoughts are like something that's happening in a different room. They're not really demanding your attention anymore, not causing a disturbance. So instead, the mind and body together become very tranquil. That's passaddhi. So naturally, the spiritual bliss evolves into tranquility. And so then, for one whose body is tranquil, and for one who is happy, the mind becomes concentrated, or the mind becomes immersed in samadhi. And so, naturally arising from that tranquility, it's possible to enter into samadhi. And then for one who, for whom the enlightenment factor of samadhi or immersion has come to fulfillment, then the next thing, this is also very interesting, he looks on with equanimity at the mind thus concentrated. Whenever a bhikkhu closely looks on with equanimity to the mind thus concentrated, on that occasion, the enlightenment factor of equanimity is aroused by the bhikkhu. On that occasion, the enlightenment factor of equanimity is fulfilled. So this factor of calm, looking on, looking over, that's what equanimity is. So equanimity is not only being very stable in the mind, it's not only being safe from disturbances to the mind, it's not only being calm, but it's also this quality of looking over with equanimity. So in this way, equanimity as the last factor in the factors of awakening is quite naturally leading you, when you step out of this sequence into the next sequence, it's leading you to wisdom of knowing and seeing. So the wisdom of knowing and seeing arises directly out of that equanimity, because the equanimity is the factor that's reached a kind of a perfection of looking at the state of the mind. So this is a bit of a sidetrack, not a sidetrack, but I'm going to give you 2 suttas on one day. So now I'm going to turn to a different file. And this is the sutta that we were reading last time, 46.51 in the, it's the wrong screen. Stop sharing. Okay. Presenter invite. Share screen. Here we go. Now, let's go through the same set of factors of awakening. And besides allowing them to arise naturally, see what we can do to nourish the arising development and perfection of these factors. So the nutriment for the arising enlightenment factor of mindfulness, it says, there are things that are the basis for the enlightenment factor of mindfulness. Frequently giving careful attention to them is the nutriment for the arising of the factor of mindfulness. So the things that are the base for mindfulness are the four factors of mindfulness, or the four establishments of mindfulness: contemplation of the body, contemplation of feeling, contemplation of states of mind, and contemplation of the phenomena, especially the Dhamma phenomena that have been pointed out by these realized teachers. And within the phenomena, especially noticing the 5 hindrances and the 7 factors of awakening. So this careful attention is called yoniso manasikara. It means directing the mind in a way which is not just on the surface, but is looking below the surface to the true nature of the phenomena, being able to see the phenomena as impermanent, and because it's impermanent, as being unsatisfactory, is able to see the phenomena as being not part of a self, not an eternal essence which is owned or possessed by me, or which defines me and who I am, but instead able to see them in our true character as something that's arising in a continuous stream of causation, and also able to see these factors and in a way glance backwards and be able to see what were the circumstance that make it possible to pay attention to the foundations of mindfulness. So like one factor is that you heard about the foundations of mindfulness. So that having heard the teaching from a realized teacher means that it's created a powerful condition that makes it possible to direct your mind in that way. It could be that because you have enough time and energy to sit for meditation, that's a good factor, a supporting factor. If your mind is not terribly disturbed by remorse and upset, if you're having the type of lifestyle which supports calmness, kindness, virtue, and that basic happiness of non-remorse. Okay, that's a factor too that helps make it possible to pay attention. And then when you pay attention to those things, then mindfulness becomes the inclination of the mind. You would naturally be inclined in meditation and outside of meditation to turn the mirror back and to look inside. This afternoon, I got my driver's license, not a driver's license, a non-driver's ID in New Jersey, and a gentleman came along and asked if I was a Buddhist, and we just had a few minutes to talk, and asked if he meditated. He says, no, he's never meditated. And I just suggested that if he could just be quiet and look inside, that would be the starting point of meditation. But if when you look inside, you've got a clue what to look for, then that's what really gets your progress going. So if you look for the four foundations and you look with that wise attention. Okay, so that's number one. Then number two, what's the nutriment for this factor about discrimination of states? And here it gives the lesson. There are wholesome and unwholesome states, blamable and blameless states, inferior and superior states, dark and bright states with their counterparts. Frequently giving careful attention to them is the nutriment for this factor of discrimination of states. So, what's the meaning of skillful? What's the meaning of not skillful? So, the state which is not skillful perpetuates dukkha, perpetuates suffering, is the cause of suffering. The state which is skillful is leading towards the end of suffering, is leading towards a reduction of suffering, is leading towards experiences of true happiness, spiritual happiness, apart from sensuality. The blamable state, what is that? That's the state that is harming yourself or harming somebody else. So the Buddha is not at this point asking you to do a philosophical investigation like what is the nature of reality? How do I know which is true? Or what is untrue? Is the world eternal or not eternal? Does the Tathagata exist after death? All of these other philosophy questions are not what's asked for here. What's asked for here is to find directly with your own experience what is hurting you and hurting other people, what is perpetuating dukkha, and what is reducing and bringing dukkha to slow down, and disappear. And if you make that connection between what is for your true welfare, what's for your true happiness, and see how the Dhamma feeds into that, then you have this factor, and then naturally it's putting a rocket power under the next factor. So then comes the factor of energy, which is called virya. And here again, it's a very interesting tip that's given. There are, because the element of arousal, the element of endeavor, the element of exertion. So in one way, it's natural when you've done the previous state that energy is going to arouse, but it's also true that sometimes your energy is weak and you're looking for a way, like what can I think about to help to bring on the kind of energy that I need for my practice. And the element of arousal is what you need to start something that you were not doing before. So if you're lying down in bed and you're going to get up, then you got to start getting up. Or if you're still and you want to move, you've got to start moving. Or if there is no loving kindness present in your mind, but you want to have loving kindness, you got to start the process of loving kindness, which might be perhaps by thinking of loving kindness or using a phrase of loving kindness, or thinking of spreading loving kindness, so that a verbal thought or that making a decision, whatever it takes to make a decision, that's what gets the energy going. And you can do this by remembering in your own life history in a very simple kind of way. You know how to start something. Like for me, if it's a morning, since I worked at an office for 25 years, and so if it's 9 o'clock in the morning, I naturally want to get to work because I've got like such a strong habit from so many decades. 9 o'clock is time to work. So if I'm in meditation and I'm feeling kind of blah and I don't really want to get going with meditation, I can just say, okay, pretend it's 9 o'clock, it's time to get to work. See, so like you can remind yourself like that. Or if a company is coming and then you want to start tidying up your house because a company is coming like that. Okay, so then the element of endeavor is, as I understand it, this is the Ayyā energy of extreme energy. So it's like then if you know how to step on the gas and go to the maximum. So think of some metaphor like that and think, okay, so I started something, then can I give it some gas? Can I increase it? And you can think of like metaphors, simple metaphors from your own life, how to do that. And apply that, then take that feeling you get from that and bring it into meditation. And then the element of exertion, these English words don't really have this meaning, but I think the Pali words do, means that you keep going. You keep going and you don't stop. So if you're going to drive from New Jersey to California, you don't just stop in Iowa and then you only got to Iowa, you didn't get to California. So then keep going until you get your destination. So that's energy. So then I think you might sort of imagine if you've got that kind of energy, then the mind may be getting like a certain kind of like a flow engagement activated, and then this is bringing you to this enlightenment factor of piti, of what's called rapture here, which is the blissful meditative state. And it says here, just simply, it's not very helpful in this sutta, some things are the basis for the enlightenment factor of rapture. But it doesn't spell out here what they are. But you may remember, if you've been going along with me over the past few weeks, that making the having the inspiration of seeing a realized teacher, listening to the Dhamma, undertaking the sila, and having the freedom from remorse as a result of having made some progress in purifying your ethics. And those things are the basis to begin to gladden the mind. And then from that gladness of the mind and from using that discrimination of states before, you have learned how to recognize the 5 hindrances, the negative factors which block wisdom and prevent meditation from getting going. And then you have learned how to abandon the 5 hindrances. And abandoning the 5 hindrances is the proximate cause for rapture. So then pay attention to the preceding factor. Pay attention to abandoning the hindrances. And if you're not able to abandon the hindrances, then pay attention to gladdening the mind. And if you're not able to gladden the mind, then pay attention to purifying your ethics, discovering what you have within you that's making the mind be disturbed by remorse, and trying to take care of that. And it doesn't mean that you've got to be perfect. It means that you've got to understand whatever you've done that was unskillful, whatever thought you had that was unskillful, that was because of causes and conditions and because of being a human being. So you have to learn how to simply acknowledge the Buddha taught that these kind of behaviors are unskillful. Therefore, I make the adhitthana, the determination, not to do this same kind of unskillful thing again. That's where the purification comes. It doesn't mean that your entire past life was perfect, but you can get out of remorse by making just simply with the understanding and the determination to turn around from unskillful or bad ethic. And so eventually you take care of the previous factor, and then the next factor becomes possible. And then when the next factor is possible, the next factor is possible. And so if PT doesn't happen to you, then you got to work your way back. Maybe that's why this sutta did not spell out what is the basis, because it depends on where you are in your practice, how far back you have to go to take care of the previous factors. And I can, I made so many mistakes when I was younger. And every great bhikkhuni that I know made a lot of mistakes when she was younger. Yeah. Every great Dhamma practitioner I know made a lot of mistakes when they were younger. And so it's not, doesn't mean that you are not going to be able to make progress on this path because you made mistakes before. One of my first meditation retreats, I was doing a self-retreat with no supervision, and I was trying to practice the Ānapānasati Sutta, of which in the second tetrad, the first factor is this piti, this bliss. But at that time, I was in grief because a loved one had passed away, and I was filled with anger and resentment because I felt that the that many people had let us down, leading to the death of my loved one. And so every time I looked into my heart to see how I felt, it was like rage. Thoughts of like being a terrorist and going and blowing something up. That was like, it was that bad. So I couldn't find a PT. So I just had to go back and be mindful and just say, okay, this is what it's like to be angry. And then you got to do that until you're taking care of it and are able to abandon that. And then the is factor can come up for you. Then we come to this tranquility. And here, the factors, the nourishment for tranquility is tranquility of body and tranquility of mind. So being aware of these factors can help to tranquilize and spread a pleasant feeling. I very often notice this in terms of some meditations, like either the metta meditation is one, and another one is even like the breath meditation, that with practicing, both of those are two kinds of samatha meditation that is leading towards tranquility. So when you're practicing that kind of meditation, you might notice a calm feeling or a pleasant feeling. And then when you notice that pleasant feeling, you may turn awareness towards the body and see if you can locate in the body where that pleasant feeling connected to meditation is located. So you suppose it's in the heart. Then you direct your awareness towards where that feeling is noticeable. And by focusing the light of awareness, it's like a spotlight of awareness, makes it become even more noticeable. And then you've strengthened it by noticing it. And then you may think of spreading that pleasant feeling around in the body. So you're like gradually expanding the spotlight of awareness from a narrow focus to a wider focus, and just keep spreading it and spreading it and spreading it and spreading it until the entire material body is bathed in the light of awareness. And that's a super pleasant kind of meditation. Or if you're doing with the breath meditation, you notice the breath like where it's obvious, like at the nose or at the throat or at the chest or at the belly, and you notice the breath there. And then you just notice the rise and fall of breath at a wider and wider spectrum until you can feel like the entire body, the breath is touching, the entire body is touched by the rise and fall of breath. And that's a way of tranquilizing the body. And then a similar, maybe ways of noticing and paying attention to the tranquility of the mind, different corners of the mind. Even letting go if some thought comes along or some perception comes along that is not the main focus of meditation. And if you just gently see it, you see it so clearly, and then release it. So that's like it's something that's in the mind. And so the mind letting go, that's like tranquilizing the mind. And then here, then, it gives the nutriment for the arising of a concentration, that means samadhi. So immersion in samadhi. And here, they give 2. So already we have been talking about several aspects which are described in the description of the 4 jhanas. So abandoning the hindrances, experiencing bliss, the tranquility of body and mind, those are all part of the factors of the jhana. But in this case, on this particular list, they're giving 2 more factors, which is the sign of serenity and the sign of non-dispersal. So serenity is calm, and non-dispersal is the unification. Unification does not mean that you're concentrating on an object by holding tightly to it. Instead, it means like a unification, as if all parts of the mental process are all pulling together in the same direction in meditation. So you've got a lot of factors that are joined together. And then the non-dispersal is that the extraneous factors have dropped away and disappeared. So both of those things. So like sensations have become more and more subtle and more less disturbing to the mind. And then the mind itself has become unified. It has got that ekaggata. And then last of all is the factor of equanimity. And here again, the sutta does not give a full description of the basis for equanimity, but we saw before that this evenly overlooking the mind and concentration, that's the factor. So these are some descriptions of nutriments for the factors of awakening, which you may choose to give wise attention to in order to nourish these factors and in order to nourish the development of meditation. These factors are entirely within the spectrum of meditation. So if you ever hear anybody complaining that the Buddha doesn't give enough specific instructions about how to meditate, which is something that's sometimes said, well, here is a set of very specific, excellent tips that you may use to improve meditation and to gain success in meditation. So now I'm going to stop that and see if there's any questions that came along. Okay, welcome Yankee Apple, Ryan, Manal, Sud, Rebecca, Anthony, Daniel, Richard, and I'm sorry, I don't read Thai, so I can't pronounce your name. And Manny, welcome to all of you. Sud has the question. This is a great question. Is there any drawback if one tries to focus on development of piti through silanusati or tyaganusati, jaganasati? Oops. Silanusati is exactly in line with the teachings about how the launching point for entering into meditation is knowing how to gladden the mind because of non-remorse. So that is exactly online, and that is exactly what already in this month I've pointed out to you 3 or 4 different spots, and there's many more spots than that in which the Buddha has made statements that suggest that this contemplation of sila is a way of entering into piti. And I'm not sure that I know what Jaganusati is. This might be maybe a Sinhalese or a different language spelling, and not the Pali spelling. So that's not a Pali word, so I can't answer that question. Maybe you could say it in English, and I'll come back and answer again. Okay. Richard asks, what is the difference between Dhammavicaya and Dhammavitaka? I ask this because I've heard that Dhammavitaka comes to be an obstacle in meditation, while Dhammavicaya is good. In the progress of the 4 jhanas, there is vitaka vichara, which are characteristics of the first jhana and which disappear in the second jhana. So those factors, that's applied thought and sustained thought. So Dhamma vitaka is a thought which is applied to Dhamma. And that would be expected to be present in the first jhana. I have not heard of Dhamma vitaka as being an unwholesome factor at all. It's only that there's a certain amount of activation or a disturbance of the mind with this applied thought and sustained thought. And eventually, if the meditation is going well, the mind doesn't anymore want that disturbance. It wants something which is more calm. And at that point, the activation of the thought drops away. And then one enters into noble silence, and in the second jhana, which is a super desirable state, definitely a good thing. I don't advise trying to get rid of applied thought and sustained thought if you have it in first jhana. In other words, the other factors are present. So the hindrances have disappeared. There's a strong piti, and there's applied thought and sustained thought. So at that point, the mind will move itself naturally to the next stage. Obtaining noble silence could be compared to the state of an ordinary person who's not entered meditation at all, for whom there's a continuous stream of verbal thinking, which is just going on, and it's like a TV, you can't stop it. So that kind of continuous thinking or compulsive thinking is not desirable. It may be thinking which is probably being fed by greed or aversion, or fed by delusion, fed by resentment, fed by conceit, fed by fear, and all of those factors kind of get the mind churning, and so that kind of churning of the mind is a negative thing. But I don't think that's what Dhamma Vitakka means. I think that other thing is what I'm describing is what you could call the proliferation of thought. So proliferation of thought is a negative thing you want to get rid of. Dhamma Vitakka is okay in the first jhana, and it will resolve itself into noble silence. That's my understanding of it. Another question from Sud. If one tries to continue to develop piti constantly, are there any drawbacks? That's a really good question, because some people question whether somebody could become addicted to piti, or whether that piti is dangerous. My teacher always advised that piti is not dangerous, that piti is essentially safe. However, I did find one sutta reference that said that if one obtains piti and is clinging to that state, then you would not get the benefit of it. You would not be able to go any further with it. And so, in that sense, clinging to piti is not what you want to do. You don't want to cling to anything. So don't cling to piti. And then the other warning that I sometimes hear is people, especially Americans or Westerners, go on a long meditation retreat, but they have not gotten themselves very well established in right view, generosity, and sila, and they've just come into a long retreat without having a good foundation. And if they are capable of going into deep meditation, and they're not well supported by a skillful teacher, and they could overestimate what they've accomplished, and they could then, when they emerge from that long retreat, they're not able to manage it, not able to sustain it, and they could fall into some kind of a psychological disturbance of being very sad because they had that great experience and then they've lost it and they're not able to get it back. So many good Dhamma teachers recommend alternating between the periods of meditation and the periods that are more involved in different kinds of activities, discussion, work, chores, activities that involve social interaction, in order to kind of test what you've accomplished in the meditation. It's like praise and blame, like and dislike, fame and infamy, all of the worldly states. Many of them are involved with society. So if you put yourself in a nice way, put yourself into society and see if the insights that you gained are able to stand up to those worldly winds, and you can still be mentally stable and secure with that exposure. And then you go back and you do more meditation, and then you get more deep in wisdom. And as that goes, then you're able to come out of meditation and be able to withstand anything, even being like captured by a illegal armed militia and sent to a terrible prison where you would be tortured or something like that. I used to say being captured by the communists, but now I realize that it's not only communists that do those things. But you would be able to, eventually be able to withstand all kinds of adverse circumstances without being disturbed because of the growth of the wisdom. So in meditation, develop piety constantly, and look for true happiness. These happy states, the happiness of loving kindness, the happiness of knowing how to make the mind glad, the happiness of piety, the happiness of that tranquility of body and mind, and the happiness of equanimity. All of these states are happy, pleasant states. So we should not be afraid of those pleasant states. We don't have to suffer to be good. So that's my answer to that. Richard, is it possible to jump over some of the Bhojangas in order to practice some and not others? For example, jump over mindfulness practice directly Dhamma Vichaya? Yes. There's another sutta in this chapter in which it's comparing it to the clothes in your clothes closet. He said, the Buddha said, I can sit down and I can practice whichever one I want. It's just like when you get dressed in the morning, you can choose which outfit you want to put on. So he definitely said, can practice whichever one you need, which is going to help to balance the mind, or whichever one is the one that you need that's on the forward edge of what you're striving for. How to overcome the hindrance of thoughts on current events in life. Thanks. If you were able to think of those thoughts and not be experiencing fear, anxiety, hatred, ill will, but if those that information only was bringing up compassion and kindness, or if it was only bringing up spiritual urgency for you to know that this world is filled with dukkha, and it always has been filled with dukkha, then it would be okay to think about current events. But most of the time, or very often, when people think about current events, they do become overwhelmed with anger, anxiety, fear, and other negative states, or even they just become distracted, so that then when they want to sit for meditation, they can't stop thinking about the problems. So in that case, reflecting, number one, reflecting that it's not personal. If you kind of zoom out to a much longer time frame, a time frame of many centuries, And then you can look back and see how much suffering people had in the Buddhist time, how much cruelty, how much injustice, how much war was done in the Buddhist time, and then go back even further and see all of the different negativities, even seeing even the environmental disaster. How many times in the past, even our planet has been subjected to environmental disasters, different like ice ages and different phenomenon like that destroyed entire species all at once and mass extinction events. So then just seeing that the universality of dukkha is one thing that can help to not look at it in a very narrow way, but then also really seriously doing what you have to do to learn how to practice loving kindness, learn how to effectively practice compassion, so that then you're able to direct the attitude and spirit of loving kindness and compassion towards these situations. It takes some learning how to do it, but there's lots of books and lots of teachers and lots of lessons and lots of opportunities to learn that. And we need to do that. The world is filled with hatred, but we will not hate. The world is filled with cruelty, but we will not be cruel. And when we realize that your karma is one thing that's you do have a choice about what karma you're going to do now, which is going to determine the future. That's like the only thing that you really have a choice about. You don't really have the opportunity necessarily to directly cause all the current events to be different than what they are. But you do have the opportunity to choose what karma are you going to do. And sitting around being resentful, for example, is by itself, just those kind of thoughts, is an unwholesome karma. And then if you would tweet or Twitter some nasty statements making fun of people who are doing bad things, that's 100 times worse karma for you. So don't do that. Don't feed it in that way. And if you are around and you hear other people speaking in that kind of inconsiderate, cruel way, then you should try to disengage yourself and separate yourself from those kind of conversations. And then, of course, we hope that in your actual deeds that you would not commit immoral actions because of feeling that somehow because of the current events that you have to do something immoral. So don't do that. Chaganusati. So, yeah, I know how to spell with the C, Chaganusati, which perhaps in Sanskrit, I'm not sure what language that is. So, yes, the recollection of renunciation and generosity is a great recollection, definitely a nutriment for piti. And this is something, these practices are well known and well established in Buddhist culture, but in Western culture, those practices are neglected. And Westerners should do more to realize that if you do an act of generosity or an act of renunciation, in the Christian Bible, it says you should do these things secretly so that you're not doing it to get famous. But in Buddhist culture, people do good deeds openly, out in the open, as a way of providing inspiration for others. So obviously, you don't want to have ulterior motives when you do acts of generosity, but to reflect and to remember about those good deeds, and to be happy for your own good deeds. Just the same way, if you read something in the news, or you heard or you saw something about somebody else doing a good deed, you feel such delight and joy in seeing the good deeds of another. I mean, even if you saw a monkey doing a good deed, you would feel so happy and joyful. You'd have a warm feeling about that. So you should also give yourself the gift of appreciating your own good deeds. Here's Ryan. In deep understanding how karma comes into fruition, be one of the grounds for the awakening factor of equanimity. Yes, in the Brahma Viharas, the formula that's given for loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, in that teaching, the reflection that all beings are the owners of their karma is the way to practice and develop equanimity. So, in particular, the Brahma Viharas are a way that's looking outward in a way which is boundless, which is including all the sentient beings in the whole world, including one's own self. So you're not excluding yourself from that. But metta practice is looking outwards, and so looking externally can bring about equanimity by not feeling resentful or disturbed or upset about what other people are experiencing, and also looking internally, knowing that what I'm experiencing right now is the fruition of my previous karma. And that helps me to calm down about that. So I don't have to be upset with it, or be blaming myself if I feel anxious, or if I feel depressed. I could say, well, it's because of causes and conditions, things that I've done before, and most importantly of all, the previous karma that caused me to take birth as a human being. That's the most important fruition of all. When I got born as a human being, I got born as a creature who's capable of anxiety, capable of fear, capable of anger, capable of all these other emotions. And then I got born into a certain culture, a certain society in which I learned or mislearned certain bad lessons, which are also creating the conditions for anxiety and fear. And this was when I didn't know any better. I was just a little kid or a little baby. How should I be able to know better than my family or relatives or the people setting the examples that they set? But now that I'm grown up, I don't need to continue repeating those same karma. But I can see that what I'm experiencing is the result of the previous conditions. And also knowing that it's always possible to change the future, that in every moment you have the opportunity to choose what kind of karma am I going to make right now. So yes, I agree with that statement. This is part of concentration development with mindfulness at the service of the 4 right efforts, preventing, eliminating the hindrances, replacing them with 7 factors of awakening. right? In the Eightfold Noble Path, the four right efforts are given in that series as preceding mindfulness, and then mindfulness preceding samadhi. In that case, I think the reason for that sequence is after you have made a lot of effort to perfect your sila, to become virtuous, to act in a way which is not harmful and which is beneficial, then you may be able to notice that the inner thoughts or the inner states of mind, even if you're not acting on it or planning a bad deed or acting on a bad deed or speaking in a way which is unskillful, nevertheless, these negative, unwholesome, toxic states of mind can still exist. And so at that point, at that level, that would be the place where a lot of the work is done about learning how to abandon hindrances and learning how to cultivate the factors of awakening. Then, when coming over to samasati, in terms of the four foundations of mindfulness, it is a way of, when practicing samasati, you simply see what's happening. You see if it's skillful or not skillful. You see if the mind is contracted or not contracted. So in that sequence, it seems like sati itself is very passive. It's not actively, controlling, stirring up, managing, manipulating, trying to cause the mind to be this way or that way, but it's trying to just be quiet and look and see what's there. So when you're actively trying to let go of the hindrances and develop the factors of awakening, then you're doing samavayama. When you're just looking to see what you got, then you're doing samasati. And then as a result of practicing that samasati, if you see that the hindrances are gone, then comes piti and the entering into a samadhi. And so the samatha vipassana actually comes after the jhanas. Samatha vipassana is part of wisdom. The four foundations of mindfulness is part of meditation. It came to be, in my opinion, a bit of a misnomer when Vipassana meditation was introduced into the West in the 1970s with the inspiration from some of the great masters led by Ledi Sayadaw and some of the other Burmese masters who were definitely emphasizing the Satipatthana and emphasizing the progress of insight. So the insights that they are speaking of is the fruit of the entire meditation process. So right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, all three of them together, synergizing and working together to come to the full development of meditation. So then that emerges with knowing and seeing things as they really are, which is one of the Vipassana knowledges. And furthermore, that emerges with completely letting go of clinging, which is related to samatha. So samatha is the aspect of realization, which is about letting go of all forms of greed, desire, all the tanha drops. And then the vipassana is the part of the training where all delusion and ignorance drops. So those things are the final maturing of the path, which is coming out of the totality of meditation. So if you said, let's go back to the first question. So the 4 right efforts, eliminating the hindrances and replacing them with 7 factors of enlightenment, can be fully known and observed and watched with right mindfulness, and then can lead into right jhana, and then the fruit of all of that can be the wisdom part of this path, which starts with seeing reality as it actually is, and matures into letting go of all attachments. And so I'm glad that the last question has led us to finally become arhants, or to see the pinnacle or the summit of where this path of practice is leading to. Of course, this practice is good all the way along, from the beginning, middle, and end. All of it is good. All of it can be filled with joy. And you should trudge along, happily trudge along this path of development to realize whatever you can in this lifetime. Okay, so we can close by saying sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Sadhu, 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 anumodami.